Good morning. I didn't realize this was happening today. Welcome back to my channel, you guys. Today I wanted to film a video just reading my essays that got me into a lot of different colleges. Today I wanted to specifically focus on the essays that got me into Stanford. Writing college essays is a really important part of the process for the applications because it really helps the admission office really get to know you. My biggest advice I could give as far as someone who's interested in getting into Stanford or any prestigious college for that matter is just stay interesting in your essays. You want to make sure you're not being a cookie cutter response that just is trying to focus on what they're saying and get into the school, but actually focus on what you want to articulate or what you want to portray to them. Don't try to become a character unless that is truly yourself. It should be easy to flow, it should be easy to feel, and you should just feel natural as you're writing your essays. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Stanford has a couple of supplemental essays, and they're all ranging pretty short responses, so 50 to 150 words. This isn't a lot, and so you really want to make sure that you're saying exactly what you want to say with as few words as possible. Briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences. I chose to focus on an experience of me working as a lifeguard, and I basically talked about this instance that went down with my boss. I arguably had one of the laziest supervisors of all time working as a lifeguard. And get this, she was only 21. On one particular instance, she yelled at me and my coworkers in front of patrons at the pool over, get this, not turning on the water slide for her. Trust, it was very hard not to retaliate. One of my biggest temptations was fighting fire back with fire, and boy was I heated. The belittlement eventually got to its boiling point, and I went to her supervisor. She lost her job, and I bumped into the line for a promotion. While it may not be the happy story, I particularly am proud of my professionalism. Keeping a cool head in the long run is what led to my success, not bucking back at my jockey. This essay was talking about extracurricular or work experience, and I chose to focus on a work experience, which I felt like a lot of people would write about extracurricular activities, and since I had a pretty good story from my work experience, I knew I could talk about it well. I didn't use a lot of words here. This is around 150 words, and I wanted to make sure I used a story that shows my character as a person. I wanted to show that I'm someone who is not afraid to challenge authority if they're the ones in the wrong, and I'm always willing to do what is right. This is the aspect of my personality that I wanted to portray, so I used that as the story I used. What is the most significant challenge that society faces today? I chose to use a really important thing in society, and if you have a Twitter or you're in social media, you really probably know what this is. Cancel culture. We as a people love to hold what others did in the past over their heads, but wouldn't it be better to allow others to actually learn from their mistakes? A fatal flaw within society's cancel culture is we disregard people's ability to change. That's a very toxic ideology. Twitter can be a very toxic place. If you look at any of their headlines, there's someone being canceled every other day. Someone is always over, and it never really works because I feel like society always is trying to cancel somebody without ever giving people the chance to grow or to change themselves. This was kind of a more personal question and is more aligned to you and what your beliefs are. You can always use a different social issue. Just make sure it's something that isn't too philosophical in the sense that it seems like you're being forced to say that because it would look good on paper. Make sure it's something that you can actually passionately talk about, and were they to follow up or something, you can passionately talk about that. How did you spend your last 2 summers? This one is another one that's pretty personal and aligned to what you're doing over the summer. You want to make sure you get the key words and the most important things that you want to articulate you did over the summer because you only have 50 words. I participated in the Duke Tip program. My studies were in the class Modern Medicine, Disease and Immunology. I also spend a lot of time songwriting. I have at least an album worth of songs by now. Summer 2K19 was spent taking a course in environmental science and working as a lifeguard. I detailed the 2 summers and kind of left them evenly worded. In the first one, I talked about my experience in the Duke Tip program, which is a opportunity that I was able to do through the Duke Tip program. But I also articulated that I had a lot of songwriting done. So that's another aspect of my personality that I'm trying to show that I'm multifaceted. And it's also really interesting because it breaks up the monotony of just trying to portray my academic record to them. The next summer I did something very similar. I talked about I was in environmental science, which was a college course that I took over the summer, and then working as a lifeguard was my work experience extracurricular that I'm also showing. What historical moment or event do you wish you could have witnessed? This is a really fun question. It's not one that you have to be confined down to any specific actual moment. It's one that you really are subjective finding as history. A lot of people would probably say something like Greek mythology, or they would say something historical with civil rights, or something like that. But I chose something a little bit more aligned to my interest. I can only imagine the roar of the crowd and the pristine glory of the moment Simone Manuel won gold at the Olympics. As a POC athlete myself, this goes down as one of the most inspirational moments in history. I wish I could have seen it in person. This is a really special type of essay that I wrote here. And because I used a moment that is technically historical, but it's not one that you would think of off the top of your head. It's pretty out of the box. I used when Simone Manuel won gold at the Olympics, because that was a history-defining moment. It's not one that you'll think of when you think of historical moments. I use this moment because it shows, my athlete-aligned interests. And then it also is interesting because Simone Manuel is a alumni at Stanford. So that's a little nod to my knowledge of Stanford's alumni, my knowledge as an athlete, and then I'm showing how it inspires me because of the community that I come from. Which words best describe you? What's for lunch? I'm starving. This was a really fun essay, and you don't need to overthink it. You can use a list, you can use adjectives, you can use nouns. I used a phrase because I felt like it would be more fun to say. And then it's also unique. When the choice is yours, what do you read, listen to, or watch? This is another essay that you really want to portray your personality. Don't overthink these type of essays. They're supposed to be fun and they're supposed to be quick fire. Think of it as if you were asked this in an actual interview, what would you say? You wouldn't have time to think, you wouldn't have time to research what you think you should say. Just say what's on your mind. I love music. Conan Gray, Doja Cat, and Selena all recently came out with some bops. I also love a good episode of Dragon Ball Super. I know, an anime geek. When I have the asides and the essays, I really want to act like I'm talking to the reader directly. And so it's kind of like if I'm writing a story, the narrator is speaking directly to the reader of the story. I listed things that I listen to and watch. I could have listed things that I read, but since I have books listed all over in other places in my applications, I felt like this would be a good time to articulate that I do something outside of reading. So yes, I really do love Conan Gray and Doja Cat, and when I wrote this at the time, they all came out with new music, so I was really bopping. Name one thing you're looking forward to experiencing at Stanford. This is a really fun essay, and this is something I would say you definitely want to kind of research it a little bit. If you have done a lot of research on the school and you know for sure Stanford's your top choice, of course go for it. But for me, I would just let me look at a lot of the things that Stanford has. You can refer to things that are academic in nature. You can refer to things that are extracurricular in nature. You can refer to traditions. I went the tradition route because that's just something that was a little bit higher on my criteria for the school I chose. And so I really chose the primal scream. I am preparing my vocal cords as we speak for the moment I can channel my inner Meryl Streep in that one episode of Big Little Lies. If you don't know Meryl Streep in that one episode of Little Big Lies, it goes like this. Yeah, that was so much fun to write because I felt like it would show the biggest aspect of my personality as basically like a reaction spam video type person. And so I was just like, that video was going around so much when I was writing this essay, and I just used it all the time. And so I figured that it would be really fun for whoever was reading my essay to just know that, in culture. Imagine you had an extra hour in the day. How would you spend that time? This is another one that you definitely want to not overthink. You want to say what you're truly feeling. Slowly but surely, I will teach myself to play an instrument. I can play a mean recorder now, but like imagine if I can master the piccolo or ukulele. If you can't tell, I'm trying to be humorous as possible in these essays, but meanwhile I'm still trying to be serious. So I'm trying to articulate what I truly feel while inserting a little bit of humor. If it's not laugh out loud humor, it's at least humor that would make you smile a little bit, you know? The Stanford community is deeply curious and driven to learn in and out of the classroom. Reflect on the idea or experience that makes you genuinely excited about learning. There is such a thing as being blinded by your intelligence. My love of psychology comes from its ability to humanize you, its ability to allow forethought. Einstein's intelligence made him ignorant. If he was more conscious about the psychological effects of power or of aggression, maybe he wouldn't have a deadly weapon for mankind. The mind is a multifaceted marvel. Nothing works the same way twice. How one person processes a big test is completely different from another. As I learned all the things I could about this field, it made me think, how can one not sympathize? We go through life blind and selfish, but truthfully, we never know what other people are going through. High school has been one of the most psychologically trying years of my life. I wish I had the resources to get help, but we couldn't afford it. It was only more recently I was provided with counseling. Additionally, in the midst of my own depression, I have insisted to feel I couldn't complain because others had it worse. It hurts to have my feelings invalidated, and no one should have the right to say your feelings are invalid. This is why psychology attracts me and I seek to learn more. This is one that you could really go either way. I chose a little bit more of the personal route. Either way, I would suggest that you really focus on what your interest or your major might be if you were to study at Stanford. Psychology is something that really interests me, and it's something that I really wanted to talk about. And so, of course, that's why I geared my essay towards. And I also make sure I use personal anecdotes and examples to try to really drive the point home. The biggest advice I would definitely say is you want to have your admission officer go through a range of emotions when they're reading your essay. You want them to have the sniffles, you want them to laugh, you want them to say, I love this kid, because that's how you get the calls back. This is a really fun one, and it's also 100 to 250 words. My essay was leaning towards 250. You don't need to make it that long. I just felt like if I were to leave it where I left it in the 2 paragraphs earlier, it wouldn't have fully driven my point home. Additionally, this essay is something that I actually repeated. I originally wrote this essay for Columbia, and I don't know, I might have changed it slightly, or I might just left it exactly how it is. I truly was last minute sending this essay in. My application was due at 11:59, and I at 11:57 copied and pasted this from my Columbia essay to my Stanford application. Obviously it worked out, and it obviously is the exact same point. So yeah, okay. Now the probably arguably the most iconic essay, the most fun essay, the one that a lot of people are excited to write, the one I was excited to write is the roommate essay. This essay is basically you write a letter that you would write to your roommate, and I'm not sure if this is correct. You might have to fact check me, but if you get accepted and you get your roommate or whatever, they actually give them the letter that you wrote as this essay. But anyway, here is mine. I think it is absolutely amazing that 10 years ago, introducing myself as a Ravenclaw would not be as cliche. Alas, I'm a Ravenclaw, so this will be one of the most important things you need to understand about me first. Also, oh hey, my name is Nkosi. Now, in addition to me being a Ravenclaw, I am also a Sagittarius, and while that may not be as significant to you, in about 15 minutes when you check in with your parents, I promise you, those will be key bullet points of the conversation. But here's a bit more about me. I am an inspiring songwriter. I'm no Nicki Minaj, but your bro pushes his pen. Speaking of Minaj, I want you to get very, very accustomed to hearing your voice. The easier this transition happens, the better. I do love a good handful of trail mix, so if you see some in the various buckets I bring in, feel free to help yourself. Also, I got those cute little pictures that hang up on our walls, whichever side fits the vibe more, you know? Oh, and this is the last thing is most important. I am from Texas, where everything is bigger. If I mention Whataburger at all, just let me grieve for a while. I'll be away for 6 months. Now, I know we're just getting started, but are you taking notes? There will be a Kahoot over all this later. I have to be honest, I rushed this essay because, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I was running out of time to write my essays, and so I kind of rushed it. I didn't really say what I really wanted to say, I guess, if I thought about it more, because I kind of just wrote this at the last second. But it's a good essay. I'm not mad at it. I'm kind of like, there are some things I really wish I could have rewritten or changed or added on, But as far as advice or tips for this essay, I would just say, make sure, once again, you're offering a little bit more aspects of your life, extracurricular interest, hobbies, music, video games, I don't know. Just make sure that you are really just talking about those. And remember, this letter is not being written to your admissions officer, it's being written to your potential roommate. So it can be a lot less formal than it is now. You should act like you're writing to an old friend or, a peer. Don't try to be so technical, don't try to be wordy and, fancy. You really just want to have fun with it. Have fun with it. Because if you're not having fun, then leave.
If you're not having fun, then just leave.
Tell us about something that is meaningful to you and why. I have lost 2 family members to suicide. The first time, I didn't realize what happened. It was my cousin, and I hadn't seen her in maybe 2 or 3 years. We weren't particularly close, but I did see her pretty often and well enough to know her. She even taught me how to play Kumbaya on the violin. It wasn't until much later that I found out suicide is what happened, and when it hit, it makes my stomach drop. The second time was definitely more close to home. My aunt. I learned of this when eating breakfast. My aunt was a woman who I had never seen cry, never seen upset. Literally a couple of Christmases before, she dressed as a gingerbread man and read to the children of the family. This highlights in me a sad but really real truth. People are afraid to ask for help. In the Black community, mental health has a negative stigma, a white people problem, or a publicity stunt. I seek to, within my life, break down these stigmas and barriers so that no one has to go through the pain that suicide and mental health did to my family. So, this is obviously a more serious essay. It doesn't have to be serious for you necessarily. It can be something that you're truly passionate about, and it might be something very happy. But for me, it was a little bit more personal and close to home. It kind of aligns back to a little bit more of why I chose the major of psychology that I would have been choosing, and I really think that it shows, a more accurate nuance to my personality. That besides all the fun and lucky-go happy and stuff, there's a real reason why I do the things I do, and there's a conviction, there's a passion, and there's a personal connection to my interest. So, yeah. Well, those are my Stanford essays. I have a couple more essays that I'll be reading for different schools, and so you can click or do, you can click here, or wherever they're gonna pop up and see what I did with those essays, because these are all essays that got me into these schools. If you like this video, drop a like, comment any concerns you have, any video suggestions, and I'll get back to you next time.